So for those of you who have been watching my channel for quite some time now, you know that I have a special interest in the Burn Guardians, and that has encouraged me to make a video about my Burn Guardian build quite some time ago, about like a year and a half ago when I first started with the Heart of Thrones expansions. Over the years, I have gathered some information, the feedback and so on for me to improve my build video quality. And so with the new release of the Path of Fire, I am very pleased to see that the Burn Guardian is now transitioned into a new specialization. Now I am referring that to the Condition Firebrand. Firebrand allowing the Guardian to have the ability to deal additional burn condition damage in the form of the tomes, but it's also allowing the Condition Firebrand to have the support that I can heal. I can also provide protections to my allies and onto myself, and on top of that I can apply a number of boons that can subsequently increase my condition damage, physical damage, and also my animation attacks, and that just make me so much more powerful compared to previously in my Burn Guardian build. And so that is the whole reason why I'm very pleased with the new expansion release. That in particular, I'm very pleased with the Firebrand specialization, because I did not expect the Guardian has a condition damage build that is so versatile that I can use my Guardian to provide support, to heal, and also to deal damage to my enemies. I'm so pleased with it. And so let's just cut the chase and let's move on to the specialization, where I can talk more about the skill set, and I'll further explain in depth about the mechanics in my mechanics sections under the utility sections, which is, you know, in a little bit later of the video. All right, let's cut the chase and let's move on to the next section, shall we? Alright, so now let's talk about the specializations of the Firebrand, Condition Firebrand. So not that much different from what I used previously for Burn Guardian video that I have made. I'm still using Zeal, Radiance, and except for the last one, I'm using Firebrand. So this build is sort of like an improved version of the Burn Guardian that I made many months ago. So the same principle applies. I'm still using the Zeal, I'm still using Radiance, with the exception of the new specialization Firebrand. So Zeal, same as before, middle, bottom, and bottom. So this one deal increased damage to burning foes, self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into detail for this one. Same with this, gain condition damage based on my power, and your gears, in particular your equipment, you will have power as part of your stats, and so the more condition damage that you gain from having additional power, the more damage that you deal onto the target. Now for the last one, I have Symbolic Avenger, and you deal more damage to the enemies who are standing in your symbol. And so as you can see in here, you have a symbol punishment, and you also have access to the symbol vengeance on your second skill of both of your weapons, your axe and your main weapon, which is the scepter. So for the next one, I have the Radiance. Radiance, I'm using middle, and top. So for this one, the key component of this Radiance is the ability to have the Radiant Fires to have the reduced recharge by 20% and the duration increase of your burning condition damage by 20%. And the interval that you can use it is the interval that resetting the skill is 1 second. So what does this mean? So Radiance Fire attribute in this specialization allows you to have a chance to reset the skill whenever you critical hit onto an enemy. And that's the whole reason why I have the right hand strength, because you are primarily going to be using your scepter to deal damage onto the target enemy, and because of that, the more critical hit that you do, the more chance that you have to reset the Zeal of Flame, and you can keep on throwing it onto the enemies, and that would deal a tremendous amount of damage. As you can see in here, the Zeal of Flame, set yourself alight, periodically burning up to 3 nearby foes, and at the 4 burning stacks, you are dealing 11,460 damage, and that is a lot. And even if you decide to throw it at the enemy, you still have 3 burning condition damage stacks on the enemy, and that would deal 8,595. That is still a lot though. It's not that much as 4 stacks, but it's still a tremendous amount of numbers in terms of the stacks that you can inflict onto the target enemy. So I highly advise you to be using this one more often, and this is what it looks like when I activate it. I set myself light, so you can see that there's an aura around me that's setting myself, you know, like a blue flame-ish. And if you decided to throw it at the enemy, you can throw it like that. Now because I have the legendary torch Rogot, so because of that, you know, the animation, you know, it changed onto the legendary torch itself. But if I don't have that, it will be throwing a blue flame light onto the enemies, and that's something that, you know, will deal 3 stacks onto them. So for the last one, I'm having Amplified Wrath. So burning you inflict deals increased damage and burn enemies when you block their attacks. So obviously the main point for me to have this one is the damage increase, and you know, having the additional burn enemies when I block the targets, I block their attacks is always a plus, because the Aegis is the main skill of, or the main, you know, auto cast skill for the Guardian that allows you to block the incoming attacks. And now let's talk about the Firebrand. And for this one, I have bottom and middle. Now bottom, Archivist of Whispers. Your virtues gain additional pages, and I will go further into detail about how I use this tomes as part of the new, you know, specialization, because this one is the new mechanics that you need to get on top of when you are playing the Firebrand, along with your new skill set, which is the mantra. So I will be explaining these in a little bit more detail when we get to the utility sections, but for now I'm using the Archivist of Whispers for me to have additional pages that I can use. For the next one, the tomes, skills gain bonuses from scrapping in the margins by the ancient bars, and that is these skills right here. You have F1, F2 and F3. So these are the tomes that you'll be using, and you know, these are the benefits that you will gain if you select this attribute, and I prefer that. So for the last one, I have Quickfire. Granting quickness to allies also grants the Ashes of the Just. So what does exactly this skill, you know, this Ashes of the Just do? Your next strike burns with justice, and imagine if you can share this to your allies. They are all going to apply burning condition damage onto the target enemies or multiple enemies, depending, you know, how many enemies coming at you. And so having this one, subsequently you can spread, sort of like you spread your burning condition damage to multiple targets by, you know, relying your allies and granting them the ability to inflict that. So this is really good in my personal opinion, because it's not only showing them the support, but to furthermore, if any of them are using condition damage build. So for example, the thief doesn't really have a burning condition damage as a condition damage tab. Instead, the thief is more specialized in bleeding and poison, and because of that, if you are able to grant the thief the ability to have burn condition damage tab as part of the rotations or as part of the skill that he or she can apply onto the enemy, is always a plus, because it will increase the overall damage of the entire team. Now, variations that I usually prefer to use when I'm soloing is having this one right here, Liberator's Vow. So I grant my allies quickness whenever I use my heal skill, and you know, heal skill is this one right here, the mantra Solace, and prepare myself to heal and also grant allies Aegis. And so whenever I do that, I also again, you know, giving them quickness as well. And occasionally, if I feel the need to have additional CC skill, then I will be swapping to the first attribute of this specialization, which is allowing my axes, allowing my axe skills to have a chance to inflict bleeding, but the simple vengeance now dazes on its initial strike, which is my second skill right here. So now I do have the ability to CC skill, to CC the target on top of the ability to inflict the bleeding onto the target enemy as well. So that is my variations. So feel free to modify that and use to, you know, to respond to certain events or certain scenario that you feel the need to swap in any of these. But the default that I'll be using, you know, most of the time will be this one, Archivist of Whispers. Alright, so now let's talk about the utilities. Alright, so let's quickly talk about the weapon choice before we move on to the utility. So at the moment I'm using Scepter and my Torch as my main weapon set, and my secondary weapon set I'm using the Axe and the Torch. Now this one right here, the Tome of Justice, allow me to burn my enemies every few of my attacks, and subsequently if I use a simple punishment, it strike the target area for 8 times, and if the enemy standing on top of that one, it will strike the number of attacks is 8 times, so it will strike for 8 times. And this the combination between the Tome of Justice, burn my enemies every few of my attacks, plays out really well with this one. So I can apply a number of condition damage stacks onto the enemies, and so there's no reason not to use it. And my main offhand weapon is my Torch. So this is the only offhand weapon that I will be using, purely on the fact that I can deal so much more damage with this one, so there's no reason not to use it. And my secondary weapon set, I'm using the Axe and the Torch. Now for the Axe, I swap to this one when I feel the need to apply a soft CC skill, which allows me to pull my enemies onto myself, or break the CC bar. Well, technically not breaking it if they have a high CC bar, but I can apply that one to reduce their CC bar, on the fact that I can apply soft CC skill. And for the second one, I have the simple Vengeance, which I can apply the bleeding and vulnerability. And let's not forget the ability to have additional CC skill when I swap to my criticism skill, as you can see in here. Alright, so let's talk about the utility. So for the utility, I'm using the Mantra of Solace as my healing skill. So aside from the fact I can heal myself, I can apply the Aegis to myself and to my allies as well. So what exactly is Aegis? Aegis is the boon that allows me to block the next incoming attacks and stack the durations. So when I apply this one to my allies, they can block the next incoming attack to themselves, saving them from a lethal blow, or maybe just saving them from incurring additional damage, or whatever the case may be. Now for the next for the utility skill, I am having the Mantra of Potence, the Mantra of Flame, and occasionally I will be swapping to the Mantra of Truth and Mantra of Law. But to be honest with you, I don't really use the Mantra of Law that often. I prefer to use the Mantra of Potence and the Mantra of Flame, and occasionally I'll be using the Wall of Reflection to reflect the incoming projectiles back to the target enemy source, or sometimes I having the Purging Flames would allow me to create an AoE range. But I don't, well, to be honest with you, I don't really use this one that often, as much as I used to, because back in the day I used the Burn Guardian, and I prefer to have this one as a mean for me to apply an AoE rings of damage onto multiple enemies. But since the introductions of the Path of Fire, I have the access to the Firebrand, and the Firebrand in the form of the Mantra of Flame, I can deal an AoE of damage, burn condition damage to the number of target in front of me. So there's no reason for me to actually go ahead and use the the Purging Flames skill anymore. However, I am still consider using it on a very special occasions, but aside from that, I don't really use that one that much often anymore. Now the other one, Hallowed Grounds, allows me to have the stability to my allies, but again I don't really use that one anymore, purely on the fact that if I want to give myself and my allies the ability to have stability, I'll be swapping to this one right here, Mantra of Liberations, which not only giving myself the stability, but I can also give myself the retaliation, which will reflect the incoming damage back to its source. So that is even more powerful than the initial Hallowed Ground. So as you can see in here, that why I consider having these, I prefer not to, because I can get so much more having the mantras. Yeah. Alright, so aside from that, I also consider having the Hammer Wisdom for additional CC skill, or perhaps maybe the Pain Sickness if I want to have additional CC skill as well. So these are the ones that I consider, and these are the ones that I will be using given a certain special scenarios. Now for the last utility skill, I'm using the Signet Wrath, allow myself to have an increase in condition damage. So the more condition damage I have, the more damage that I can deal, and I can kill the enemy faster. Common sense, right? Now for the elite, I have the ability to swap between my renewal focus and my mantra of liberations, and I already explained earlier to you. Mantra of liberations allows me to have stability and retaliation that can support onto my allies, and also give myself a stability and retaliation so that I can better tackle certain mechanics and certain events. Alright, so the renew focus, what it does is that it will renew the skill that I have on my F1 to F3 right here. As you can see, these are the tomes that allow me to have access to special skill as part of the new Firebrand specializations. So this one is my this one right here, this setup right here is my default format that I'll be using for my Condition Firebrand, but it's also subject to the scenario as well. So sometimes I swap to the other ones, but at the current time of me filming this one, this one right here is the current format that I'll be using. So just giving you a quick demonstration of what it looks like on the Mantra of Flame. So I can apply that one, and as you can see in here that I fire a sort of like a triangle area effect in front of me, like breath fire in front of me, and that would deal burn condition damage onto my target enemies, and in the final charge I can deal 11,460 in the form of 3 stack of condition damage. So that is a lot. Now the mantra potence allows me to have the might and also having quickness. So quickness allows me to activate my skill faster, as you can see in here. So this is the default attack animations, very slow, but if I activate my mantra, so as you can see in here, I attack way faster, and subsequently if I give that to my allies, they can attack faster as well, and that will kill the enemy faster, and that is always the beneficial boons to have. So use that wisely. Alright, so now let's talk about the mechanic of the tomes and why I love this new specialization so much. So the Tome of Justice, which is more tailored to the attacks, and the Tome of Resolve, which is more tailored to healing, and the Tome of Courage allows you to provide protection onto your allies and onto yourself. Now before we get into that, it is crucial, this is what I think, work with me on this one. It's crucial for me to remember these tomes by the category. So the first one is your attack, the second one is your healing, and then the last one is your protection or defense, or whatever you want to call it. So if I can categorize each one of them into different categories, that will make it easier for me to respond to certain mechanics just by knowing which one to use based on the purpose of the tomes, and that subsequently make me a better player. That's what I hope for, so that I can assist my team better. So that's my intentions. Now each of the tomes, when you activate them, they will give you a special skill that you can use on top of whatever you have on your weapon skill, and on top of whatever you have on your utilities. And to me, this one is what makes the Condition Firebrand so attractive to so many people, purely on the fact that it allows you to have more burn condition damage pumping out, and you do have the ability to provide a lot of support to your team members and also onto yourself as well. And that is the reason why the Condition Firebrand has been praised very well by a lot of people, in myself included. A lot of my team members, you name it, if you talk to any of my friends, even my personal friends, included my guilds and so on, they will be praising the Condition Firebrand purely on the fact that it is it's easy to gear, it deal a lot of damage, and it also provide a tremendous amount of support to the team. So that's the whole reason why a lot of players really like this one on top of whatever other classes that I play. So let's talk about the Tome of Justice, which is your attack. So whenever I activate the Tome of Justice, I do have the ability to have the new 5 skills at my disposal. The first one, which allows me to attack an AoE fire in front of me on top of whatever I have with this one. So as you can see in here, I can continue to pump out more fire attacks onto my target enemies, and that would deal a lot of damage, right? Not only that, I also have the ability to ignite the enemies in an area of 240 points radius around me. For the third skill, I do have the ability to pull my enemies, to my areas, and subsequently I can use my first and second skill to deal, to any enemies that are, outside of my range. Pull them in, deal damage, and burn them. That's what I like to do. So before I'm talking about the fourth skill, I like to just assess on the last skill first, because the minute I use my the minute that I use my fourth skill, it will diminish, and I have to wait for like 30 or 40 seconds before I can activate that again. So for the last skill, I have the Ashes of the Just. So this one, if you recall earlier that I have it right here, so the Ashes of the Just, your next strike burns with justice. So that basically what it means is that you apply burn condition damage onto the enemies, right? And you can share the Ashes of Justice to your allies. So the minute you activate this one, you can share it to your allies, and subsequently that combination plays out really well with this one. So every time when you provide quickness, you also apply the Ashes of Justice, and with the skill right here, you apply your Ashes of Justice onto yourself as well, so you can apply additional burn condition damage onto the enemies, and that is something that I love it. So I honestly, I really do love this skill. Alright, so now let's talk about the chapter 4. Chapter 4 is my favorite. Even I love more than the fifth skill. Reason for that is because this one apply a large AoE effect, and that would deal burn condition damage to a variety of mobs within that range, and that it can pose up to 5 times. So imagine it poses 5 times, applying burning condition damage and bleeding, and imagine that you're in the meta events and you apply this skill, it would deal your damage to a lot of mobs that are coming to your way. Let me show you what it looks like. You see, it is a huge AoE effect, and that I love it. I really do love this one even more than the Ashes of the Just, purely on the fact that it is a very large AoE field, and I can apply a lot of bleeding and a lot of burning condition damage to my target enemies, and that I can kill them so much faster in the meta events, and that would just make me richer in the form of more loots. More loots I receive, more I can sell, and it just make me a little bit richer. Maybe not so much richer, but you get the idea. Alright, so let's move on to the next one, the Tomes of Resolve. This one is more specialized into healing, so there's not a lot for me to talk about this one, aside from the fact that you apply a lot of regeneration onto your allies and onto yourself. But one thing I do like about this skill, this Tomes, is that the last skill, Eternal Oasis. This one can purify your allies with the waters of Amnoon and increase the healing they receive. So you convert the condition damage that you yourself received and your allies have been receiving into boons, and as you can see in here that it does a tremendous amount of a tremendous amount, but it converts a tremendous amount of boons, 5 of them, in a very large AoE effect into boons, and that's something that providing a very great support to your team and onto yourself when you are facing the target enemy that deal a lot of condition damage. And not to mention that you also you have the ability to apply a large AoE of regeneration and also swiftness as well, so make you move faster to get away from combat or get away from the target enemy. Alright, so let's move on to the last one, the Tome of Courage. This one provides you with stability, retaliations, and protections. So what do I mean by retaliation? Where is it? Yeah, retaliation in skill 5, and the rest of them provide you with protection, stability, ages, and you name it, a lot of protection that you can use, and a lot of protection, stability and support skill that you can use to support your allies. I really do love this one because it gives me so much access to my support skill that I can apply to my allies, and it does provide you with a lot of attacks that you can use onto the target enemies. So honestly, this this specialization, the Firebrand, is like the jack of all trades. I can do so much more with it compared to what I previously have for my Burn Guardian. So Burn Guardian is not even in pair with this one anymore. So that's the whole reason why I swapped to the Condition Firebrand predominantly now that I use it a lot. I use this one in meta events. I use this one in high-end content, the raids, the fractal, the mist. Even so that I brought my Condition Firebrand. As you can see in here that I'm sitting in the Wing 5 raid at the moment, so it just came out. So I'm in here and I just recently beat up until I can meet the final boss Doom. So as you can see in here that it has a lot of application, and you can use that to support your allies, and you can use it to deal damage to the enemies. And it's not that hard to gear. I can get into the equipment later on to further explain to you how easy it is to gear this one on a budget that can deal a tremendous amount of damage, but it can still provide you with a lot of support to your team members. So but before I go, just quickly touch on to the resistance. What exactly is resistant boon? This one, conditions currently on you have the ineffective status on it and the stack duration. So what it does is that it negates the effectiveness of the condition. So it's really good if you are facing the enemies that apply a lot of condition damage onto yourself. And to add onto this one, you do have the ability to provide protection onto your allies. So protection is reducing 33% of incoming damage. That is a lot. And like I said, I love this specialization purely on the fact that I can provide so much support to my team members, but I can also deal so much damage. And that is the reason why not only me, but many other people that I talk to love Condition Firebrand. Alright, so that's it. That's all I have to say. Oh, just quickly just show you the demonstration of what it looks like. AoE effect. And this one, you know, large AoE support. So that's all I wanted to show, and let's talk about the let's move on to the next topic where I talk about the equipment. So before I'm going into the equipment, let me just say that my intention for my Condition Firebrand is to have the maximum amount of condition durations at 100%. So condition duration, if you apply a condition damage stacks onto the enemy, so the longer the condition damage stays, the more damage it will deal over time, and subsequently that explains the reason why I want to have my condition duration at 100% so that I can double that amount. So for that reason, I'm using the superior rune of Balthazar and the superior sigil of Malice and superior sigil of Smoldering. These three, superior rune of Balthazar will increase my burn condition damage duration by 45%, and that combined with sigil of Smoldering 20% and superior sigil of Malice, which is 10%, so that 30% at 45%, I have a fixed 75%. Now that is purely on the sigil, and the runes already give me 75%. For my weapons, I'm using my Viper set. So the Viper set allows me to have expertise. Expertise stands for condition duration, and if I have expertise, then it will further increase my stat. So weapons, I have scepter, and I have my torch, and I have my axe. All three of them to be using the Viper's stats, and that will increase further condition durations. So I am looking at about 80% of my condition durations, and if I use food, high-end foods, I can pump that number up to 100%. And for that reason, I don't really feel the need for me to be using any Viper stats on my equipment. So instead, I will be using a combination between the Sinisters and the Grievings. The reason why I'm using the Sinisters is because it provides me with the ability to have power, precision, and condition damage, and the Grieving is allowing me to have power, precision, ferocity, and condition damage. Now you might be questioning me, why do I have ferocity? Ferocity is for critical damage, not condition damage. The reason for that is because the Condition Firebrand, it can deal damage in the form of physical damage and condition damage, and having the ability to have 100% points in my condition duration, I do not feel the need for me to go further increasing my condition duration anymore. So instead of that, I try to increase both my condition damage and also physical damage in the form of critical damage, and that subsequently pushed my overall damage so much higher than what I initially anticipated, because I have tested using my Sinisters and using my Vipers, and I have found that if I make a combination between a Sinisters and my Grievings, I can achieve so much more damage rather than purely just having my Grieving or having just purely my Sinisters or Vipers, for that very reason. So let me just reiterate that again. My current setup, what I want to do is try to maximize my damage by having a combination of the following: at least the minimum of 2 pieces to be the Sinisters, and the rest of my equipment, so my armor, my trinkets, and so on, I'll be using Grieving. Now for my weapons, I have to use Vipers, so that I can have the access to expertise, which can push my condition duration to over 80%, so that I can use my food to pump it up to 100% in my condition durations, in particular the burn condition durations, that I can, deal additional damage over time. So that is my intention. So feel free to modify it to your needs. Now I understand that because the Grievings and the Sinisters, they are quite, not difficult to obtain, but it takes time for you to obtain those 2 stats, purely on the fact that the Sinisters, you have to do the events from the season 2 or the living story, and the Grieving is, you have to do the legendary bounty to be able to get the special material crafting. I can't remember, inscription or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of that one, so that it can give you the access to craft the Grieving. So for that very reason, it can be quite time consuming for you to be able to obtain the full set of gears. So for that reason, I also have the purchase option for you to consider. So if you want to obtain this, if you want to play this class, you don't really need to maximize all of your damage. It's only if you intending to do high-end content like Raise or Fractal of the Mist, then in that case I would prefer you to maximizing your damage. But if you just want to try the class out or play meta events, or do normal events or anything like that, in that case then I have a purchase option for you, and it's ridiculously cheap. I am referring to the use of Rabid set. Rabid is precision, toughness, and condition damage. Now, if you still want to maximize your damage, then in that case I prefer you to go for the Rampagers, which is power, precision, and condition damage. For the runes, just focus on the superior rune of Balthazar. There's nothing wrong with this, and at the moment it's fairly cheap. From what I checked last time, it's roughly about like 6-7 silver. So it might subject to change in the future, but at the current time that I'm filming this one, superior rune of Balthazar is ridiculously cheap. I can guarantee you that anybody can afford that one. So yeah. Now as for the Sigil, I would highly recommend you to, even though the superior Sigil of Smoldering will cost you roughly about a gold at the current time of me filming this one, but I think it's worth it, because 20% increase in condition duration, burn condition duration, is always a good thing, because the longer that your damage stays, the longer condition damage stays on this target, the more damage it will do over time, and 20% increase in condition duration is ridiculous. So that's something that I would prefer to have, and I highly recommend you to buy it. Superior Sigil of Smoldering, maybe not so for the Superior Sigil of Malice, because Superior Sigil of Malice increase your condition duration by 10% at the price of 10 gold. So that is a little bit much in my personal opinion for a budget build. So maybe not so with the Spear Sigil of Malice, but the Smoldering Sigil, I highly recommend you to get it. But if you on a really tight budget, then I highly recommend you to buy the major version of it, which is a little bit less, so roughly about 15% of the burn condition duration. So that costs you like what, a couple of silver or maybe 10 silver, I don't know, I haven't really checked on the market, but it will get you somewhere until you can afford the superior version of the sigil, right? And this, if you can't afford the superior sigil of Malice, and I don't recommend that for the budget option, in that case go for superior sigil of Fire, which allow you to have a 50% chance to deal an AoE effect, which is called Flame Blast, if I remember that correctly, in the radius of 240 points radius around the target enemy, so allowing you to have additional AoE skill, you know, so that's not really a bad thing. So those two are the ones that I recommend you to get if you're on a really tight budget, particularly the major rune. So if you can't afford the spirit rune of Smoldering, go for the major rune, there's nothing wrong with that one. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback for me, feel free to leave the comments down in the comment section below, and I'll try to respond them as fast as I can. Aside from that, enjoy, have fun, and I will see you later.